Hi guys, today we're talking a little bit more about emotional regulation, the alternative um, to which is emotional suppression, which what I talked about in my last video is what our culture and our society almost demands of us. But that's okay, because from the outside, emotional regulation and emotional suppression look exactly the same. And that's one of the reasons that our society congratulates us for being emotionally suppressed, because to everybody else, emotional suppression looks like emotional regulation. People congratulate you, and they're like, "Oh, look how well emotionally well regulated you are." No, most people are not well regulated. We're suppressed, and what the consequences of that is that it just haunts us. The healthiest thing for us to do would be to express our emotions in the moment and feel them fully and completely. Not express them so everybody else can hear about it, but express and be honest with them to ourselves, so that we process them and navigate those experiences. And but when we don't know how to do that, we suppress it, we internalize it, and we end up directing things like anger and guilt and shame and sorrow. We end up directing those things at ourselves, because we're the only ones left to be the target of it. There's probably things in our lives that do uh, legitimately deserve to have those emotions directed at, but if we don't feel them and express them to ourselves fully and be honest about them, we won't process it. We'll just suppress it, and it ends up haunting us. So one of the things that we can do is, remember last time I talked about taking that story and put a bookmark in it, and saying, okay, I don't have time to break down. I don't have time to have a breakdown right now. So next week I'm going to schedule time to sit with this. So what does sitting with emotions look like? Why would we sit with those difficult emotions? Isn't that just wallowing in it? Well, no, it's the opposite, because wallowing in the emotions is usually accompanied by, "I wish I wasn't feeling this. I wish it would go away." Or we're directing it at the wrong things. And what sitting with emotions is just allowing ourselves to feel the emotion for a couple of reasons. Not so that we can, direct it at, whatever's going on right in front of us. That's the mistake that we make. We think, yeah, this thing, pissed me off, and so, I've got emotions, about it. But if we're really honest, a lot of the time, our emotions in the moment, directed toward whatever's going on right in front of us, is probably extremely disproportional. It may legitimately, deserve, our feelings. But if they're disproportional, then it probably has nothing to do with whatever's going on right in front of us. It has to do with stuff that happened in our early childhood, in our past, that we're still, carrying around with us. And so what we have learned accidentally, the mistake that we have learned, is that the emotions are the enemy. Because when we're very young, we may confuse a few things. We may confuse earning with deserving, and we may confuse the emotions with the threat of danger itself. And so, and your fear is a useful feedback tool. Pain and fear are useful. Pain lets us know when our beliefs are facing the wrong way. Fear lets us know that, hey, there's a train coming. You're standing on the train tracks, and there's a train coming. And if you don't have, some kind of, healthy fear response, you might not step off the tracks in time. So fear is a useful feedback tool. But if there is no train coming, and we're afraid of a train coming, then it's not healthy. We can get, overwhelmed And if we have too much of a fear of the emotion, then that emotion can be paralyzing. So, um, what we can do sitting with emotions, and here's how that's done, is we schedule time, at least like 15 or 20 minutes to even longer, half hour, 45 minutes, probably no longer than an hour. But what we do is we sit with that emotion and we allow ourselves to feel it fully, and we watch ourselves feeling that emotion, and we kind of resist the urge to attach it to a story. We just let ourselves feel the feeling, just let ourselves feel the emotion, feel it in the body, feel it in the mind. Observe how it's trying to process itself. Observe how parts of ourselves want to avoid it. Observe how some parts of ourselves are absolutely terrified of the emotion. And so what sitting with the emotions can do is it can demonstrate to those parts of our subconscious over and over and over again that the emotions aren't the enemy. And so you might have to talk to some of those parts and say, just watch. Just watch. We're going to sit and feel this. I'm going to feel it with you. Because remember, if we've got parts of ourselves that are feeling things that they believe are unacceptable, if we refuse to share in those things, or we don't know how, then those parts of ourselves can believe that they're unacceptable. And so they just retreat further and further into our subconscious, and they're motivating, things, telling us to do things we don't want to do, feel things we don't want to feel, think things we don't want to think. So sitting with the emotions shows those parts of ourselves. It demonstrates that the emotions aren't the enemy. The emotions themselves are safe, and they always deserve to be acknowledged. Most of the time, they deserve to be validated. Not all the time, but they always deserve to be acknowledged and felt and processed. The other thing that sitting with emotions can do is it can eventually point out that in order to even feel those emotions at all, we would have to have internalized things about ourselves that aren't true. Like, for example, and I use this example all the time, but the emotion of loneliness. Understand, you couldn't feel the emotion of loneliness unless you had a core belief about yourself that you were unwanted. And that core belief could, and your experiences could lead to other beliefs about the self, that that your worth is dependent on external validation, and that I'm likely to be abandoned, and probably nothing I ever do is ever going to be enough. And so if you don't have some kind of swamp of those false self-limiting beliefs in your subconscious, probably held by different parts of your subconscious, who took on their roles at different times in your life, and they're pushing and pulling you in different directions. If you didn't have some kind of swamp of those false beliefs in your subconscious, you wouldn't even be able to feel the emotion of loneliness. You would just look around and say, oh, this is peaceful. So those are a couple of things that sitting with emotions can eventually lead us to. That is liberating to us. It helps to unburden those parts of ourselves that are carrying those false beliefs around, and it can allow us to let go of some of the maladaptive strategies that those parts of ourselves continue to use that get in the way of us living our daily lives. I know this was kind of a long video. Thanks for sticking with us. Watch this video to the end. Please like, subscribe, share, all that TikTok and YouTube stuff. Until next time, please have a wonderful rest of your day and be blessed.